right, everybody, welcome to BO Boys for Monday, May 8th. Fuck it, it's a raw feed. We're doing it live. I'm Clayton.
Yeah, I'm Pat and Clayton. We got to get into it. Today is all about the state of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 has come out this weekend. We've got the numbers, and there is a lot to talk about. This is a very, very important episode of the BO Boys. So, Clayton, could you give us a very important plow for the weekend of Friday, May 5th?
Yes, number one, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 made $114 million in its opening weekend. Number two, the Super Mario Bros. Movie made $18.6 million, down only 54%. It lost 295 theaters. It's at $518.1 million in its fifth frame. Number three, Evil Dead Rise made $5.7 million, down 53%. It lost 381 theaters. It's at $54.1 million in its third weekend. Number four, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, made $3.3 million, down 50%. It had no theater change. It is at $12.6 million in its second weekend. And number five, another newbie, Love Again, crawls into the top five, $2.4 million in its first frame. That is your top five.
All right, Clayton. I mean, today it's all about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I
Yes.
mean, we look at the rest of this top 10, and it's Mario is still doing great, and Love Again did exactly what we predicted, which is Jackass at the box office, did not do anything, made $2.4 million. And all the rest of the stuff is where you expected. John Wick is still doing great. Dungeons and Dragons has got to 90 million. It's probably not going to hit 100. Air is over 50 million. Guy Ritchie's The Covenant is by default still in the top 10. Sisu exists, whatever. The only thing that matters this week, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 opened at $114 million. So, first of all, I'm giving myself a light pat on the back. I predicted 110, so I didn't quite nail it, but I was pretty close. You went 120. It kind of split the difference between us, though it was closer to my prediction. David
Yeah.
Thompson of the Direct Podcast, our Marvel expert, great man, great podcast. He was feeling optimistic. He went 125. This movie didn't come close, and I'll throw it out there. This is a disappointment.
Yeah, because you're saying 125, even that is not good
No,
for this film. I mean, it would be the best of what the tracking had shown,
right.
right?
But the tracking
But
was not good.
the tracking's not good. And the
The tracking
tracking
was not good.
has never been good. Even
Right.
when we go back to our episode where we in the archives, we have there in the title that Guardians the Galaxy 3 tracking hits and it's dismal.
Yep.
And it got worse before it got better
Yes. Because
with
I
that
think
tracking.
that episode was probably a month or two ago, and at that point the tracking was what 130 or so. When we were like, this is
Mhm.
low, and then as we got closer to the movie, the tracking got as low as it's going to make 120, and that's
Yep.
really low. And the movie didn't hit the tracking.
There was murmurs, Pat,
Oh my god.
that this thing was tracking to go under 100. And
So it
then
didn't do that.
towards the end of the like the tracking, when it got closer to the due date, people were like, okay, now I'm going to start buying tickets.
Right.
But it rebounded a little bit, but not enough to make this thing on steady feet,
No.
because right now this 114 really is a question mark,
Mm-hmm.
because it did barely better than Quantumania, which is a loathed film.
Yes. Fully loathed.
And now, of course, people didn't loathe it that opening weekend because people hadn't seen it,
Right.
but it dropped off a cliff.
Right.
And this movie has really great exit scores.
Yes, it's got
People
an A
like
cinema
it.
score. Yeah.
People really like it. And yet there was a slight uptick over the weekend, but not a big bounce. Like, my thought was, I was kind of thinking, okay, well, 110, that could happen. It could go higher, it could go lower, but there is
Right.
a possibility with these, like, really great exits that it could go to 120. Like, I felt
Right.
like there was a possibility that there could be a lot of walk up because people were saying, "This is good, this is good." And word travels fast, pardon me, it's
Yes.
a wild
Yes.
feed, fuck it.
Yeah.
It travels fast, and it can be one of those things where you could get an uptick of $10 million over a weekend
Yes.
because of good word of mouth. We've seen it happen. This
Right.
did not happen.
No, this was not a Bad Boys 3 situation in which
Mhm.
the word of mouth drove the box office to go higher and higher as the weekend went. The word of mouth here didn't really matter. It didn't matter because the thing is, these superhero movies, especially these Marvel movies, are not the flavor of the month anymore. And listen, this movie opens $114 million. That's a huge number. You know, that's almost as big as James Cameron's Aquaman made in the Entourage universe back in the early 2000s. Not as big, but almost as big. So it's a big number. But for comparison's sake, 1 year ago,
Mhm.
May 6th, 2022, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness opened up to $187 million domestic. The same weekend, 1 year ago, the kickoff of the summer, a
Mhm.
Marvel movie. And that movie opened to about $70 million more than Guardians of the Galaxy 3 did. And Doctor Strange is not so was not supposed to be as big of a franchise as the Guardians of the Galaxy. I mean, the Guardians of the Galaxy, especially that second one, was a sensation. So there's Doctor Strange 1 only opened to like 80 million. Doctor Strange 2 opened to 180 million. So you would think Guardians of the Galaxy 3 opening in the same spot a year later in a time that the further we get away from COVID, that more and more people are going back to the movie theater. So it's a better time now than it was 1 year ago. And yet there is this big decline. And that
Well,
decline is because Marvel movies are just not as popular as they used to be, which is okay, but it's
That's
true.
that's true, but again, Pat, we're gonna argue about this till the end of flipping time. The
Hmm.
reason why Doctor Strange opened bigger than a regular Doctor Strange movie is because it was akin to a Captain America Civil War type movie. It was bringing together strains from
Well,
other
let,
movies,
let let's not
Pat,
let's not relitigate the specifics of Doctor
but so
Strange,
that's why what I'm saying,
but
that's why
this
you
movie
can't.
opening 70 million less than Doctor Strange did a year ago in the same spot is a sign of Marvel decline. Doctor Strange was not going to have Iron Man and the Incredible Hulk and all the characters. It was promising, hey, maybe John Krasinski will be in this as Reed Richards.
No, it
Maybe.
had Scarlet Witch. Let's not you can go back
Let's
and
not
listen to our
relegate. Let's not,
arguments many times about this.
yeah,
What I'm saying here, let me just finish what I was
sure.
saying, okay?
Sure.
Of
Continue
course.
talking about the casting of Doctor Strange from one
Oh
year
my
ago.
god. Of course, it was not this movie was not gonna do that number for the reasons I stated. But the problem is this should have done Love and Thunder numbers at least,
Yes,
right?
at
Because it
least.
didn't have to be as big as the second one. Nobody expected it to be as big as the second one because that was in the prime of Marvel's life. So everybody was going to see every Marvel movie and rushing to see it and seeing it twice, right? If this movie would have made even 135, I would have
Hmm.
said, you know what? They still maybe got it.
They maybe, yes.
This is 114. This is the same. This is just a little bit. This is around the same amount that the original Spider-Man made in 2002, right?
Jesus.
So listen, that was a huge. That was a record at the time. That was huge.
But we're not
But
adjusting for inflation.
absolutely, we're not. We never do that. But
No.
that's the thing, is that this is the movie that was supposed to kick off the summer. It's a Marvel movie, and we're looking at a movie that opened at 114.
114. You mentioned Thor: Love and Thunder. That came out this past summer. That opened to 144.
Yeah,
So a
that's what I'm saying.
$30 million decline
Yeah.
from Thor 3 down to or Thor 4 down to Guardians 3. That should be terrifying to the Marvel movie executives. It should
Well,
be terrifying.
here's the problem with it, is that it used to be that people would go see Marvel movies
Mhm.
either for the connectivity, because it was just the movies at the time that everybody loved, because the factory was pushing out stuff that was hitting all the zones, the action zone, the funny
Right.
zone, all
Right.
that. Now, there's been so many stinkers in a row for them
Yes.
that even a good Marvel movie is assumed to be bad.
Yes. Yes.
And this is a
People don't
victim.
believe this A cinema score.
This is a victim of Black Widow. This is a victim
Mm.
of the Eternals. This is a victim of Love and Thunder. This is a victim of
Quantumania.
Quantumania. Okay,
Yes.
this is a victim of madness.
Yes. 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 This movie being the direct follow-up to Quantumania, I don't think everyone gave enough credence to how damaging the dislike for Quantumania would be. Because this is the next Marvel movie after people came out of Quantumania and were saying, "What the F was that? These movies are trash. These movies stink. These movies are lame." Those were the quotes you're getting coming out of Quantumania. And then Guardians of the Galaxy 3 has to be the one that tries to get people to forget about those feelings they just had 2 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
Quantumania didn't come out 2 years ago. It came out 2 months ago. If you were a newborn baby when Quantumania came out, you're only 3 months old right now.
Mm-hmm.
So think about that. Think
And
about
that
that.
and that bad buzz about Quantumania has transferred to you, right? Because
Mhm.
you're a baby and you're a sponge and you
Right.
soak in stuff. Even if you don't understand words, there's psychic energy. There's
Yes.
energy that is around Marvel now.
Yes.
And that baby is going to be crawling away from Marvel, not towards
Mhm.
it.
Mhm. Mhm.
Now,
Yes.
let's talk really quick about demos here, because you were
Okay.
kind enough to paste these demos into the chat. Thank
Yep.
you, Pat.
You're
So
welcome.
62% male, 58 between 18 and 34, and the largest demo being 25 to 34 at
Mhm.
31%. That all
Mhm.
tracks, right?
Yep. Younger
Diverse
men go see these movies still. Yeah. They'll be the last ones to give this up for sure.
absolutely. As they are with all things,
Yeah.
right? Updated diversity demos: 41% Caucasian, 26% Latino and Hispanic, 16% Black, 17% Asian and other. So, listen, I mean, that's great. The diversity is there. I
Yep.
mean, somehow the Latino and Hispanics were able to go see this movie and also watch Bad Bunny do a great
Yes.
do a great match at, what was it? When it was
WWE Backlash. Bad Bunny
Backlash
headlined
and
in
Backlash.
in Puerto Rico. Great match, and his fan base was able to both watch his match and see Guardians of the Galaxy. Yeah, Latino and Hispanic over indexed, which is you love to see that.
And so here's what I think damaged this movie a little bit with females.
Hmm.
Other than it just being a Marvel movie in general, which, females do go see these movies.
Right.
But there is, and I don't want to spoil anything, but it's out there, is
Hmm.
that this does focus a lot on Rocket, and there
Uh
is
huh.
some animal, I don't want to say animal abuse, but not by of course, the production, but
Right.
it's depicted in this film.
Yes,
And
yes.
we all
Characters
know,
abusing animals. I'm sure no animals were harmed in the making of this movie because everything's digital anyway.
and I don't want to genderdize, okay?
Mhm.
But I
Mhm.
will a little bit here, in that, in just my experience
Mhm.
with the women in my life,
Mhm.
They do not like to see animals harmed. They
Right.
do not like jokes about animals being harmed. They don't want to see dead animal carcasses.
Right.
Okay. I know all these things from experience.
Right. Right.
So
Now,
the fact that this buzz was out there,
mhm.
it could be like, I don't want to see this movie because I don't want to be bummed out by seeing animal abuse.
Yeah.
Even if
Yeah.
it's done on a green screen and it's done poorly by rushed VFX artists,
Right.
it's still animal abuse.
Right. 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 And you're making a concerted gamble there that the amount of women who will stay away because there is animal torture in your movie will be overridden by the amount of extra men who will come in to see the animal abuse. You know,
Yes.
that's the gamble you're taking when you put graphic animal torture in your movies. That enough
Mhm.
men will come because of it that will cancel out the women who stay away. And based on $114 million opening weekend, the gamble didn't pay off.
It did
The
not. No.
the animal torture that is reportedly in this movie did not get enough extra men in to watch it.
Mhm.
And because, yeah, 62% male. We don't have in front of us all the usual statistics. Obviously, superhero movies are going to have more male, but that does seem high. That does seem
Mhm.
like these comic book movies are starting to turn into a sausage fest, which is, again, women love comic books, women love Marvel movies and superhero movies, but comic book industry is traditionally a bit more of a sausage fest. And
Yeah.
when the MCU was in its prime, everyone was going to see it, and they
Yeah.
were big date movies. And I think a lot of men who saw these movies on dates 3 years ago, 4 years ago, in the Infinity War Endgame time, I think their dates are no longer with them, and they're seeing movies like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 alone.
And that's for many reasons we won't get into.
Right, right, right.
Right, but that
They're
definitely has
single
happened.
now.
They're
Yeah,
single now,
they're single
and
now.
I don't know how ready to mingle they are, to be
Right,
honest, about it, to be
right.
perfectly frank. So, and to say, like, I had said this in previous episodes, that the buzz on this is that it's more sobering, it's a
Mhm.
bummer, it's solemn, which is not bad
Right, it could make for a
necessarily.
great movie. It could make for a movie that is artistically more satisfying,
Yes. But is
but
it
that doesn't
Rainbow
tr
Road? Is it
right,
Mario and
right,
Luigi and Bowser battling, and Princess, my
right,
apologies,
right.
and Toad
And Donkey
and Donkey
Kong.
Kong, thank you,
Yep,
battling it out on Rainbow Road?
right.
And not every movie has to have Rainbow Road, huh?
Huh? I
But
mean, legally they can't because Nintendo owns the IP.
if they could, they would.
If they could, they
If you
would,
could
but they
have the
can't.
Guardians playing, like, in carts on Rainbow Road, you would do it. You just would. You'd have
Yes.
to. You'd have to.
Yes, you'd have to do
But
it.
what I'm saying is, not all movies have to be Rainbow Road,
Mhm.
but I don't know if the somberness of this movie affected how many people wanted to rush out and see it.
Right, right, right. Right. It doesn't feel like a party in the way that Guardians 2 felt like a party. When
Which
that
they're
movie
serious.
opened up to
They're
100 and what, 46
46.
million. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, that's a party movie, $114 million. While that sounds big and it's great to have a movie open to 100 million, again, it shows the decline in interest for the Marvel movies. It just does.
Now, Pat, I want to posit this to you because I feel like
Okay.
this is the most mind bending of the questions that always come up when
Mhm.
these Marvel movies are talked about. Is it better for a Marvel movie, to be so insanely intrinsically like linked to every other Marvel movie that you
Mhm.
have to have seen all the shows and all the
Right.
movies to even parse it out? Or is it better for a Marvel movie to be not necessarily completely standalone, but less linked? Because I think there's this thing where the reason why these movies fail, people always will either be like, well, Quantumania failed because it's too connected. It should have been not connected like the other Ant-Man movies. And now people are saying, oh, well, Guardians isn't as connected to the next phase, so that's why this failed. So which one is it? Or is it just the fact that Marvel movies are flailing and it's like, who knows what's going to hit now and what's not going to hit now? Because
So
quality doesn't seem to matter.
I think the connectivity is a trick question in the sense that in the first 10 years of Marvel, the connected nature of the movies was obviously a benefit because the more
Mhm.
connected they got and the closer you got to Infinity War and Endgame and years and years worth of these movies overlapping, it obviously helped because the box office in that 2018-2019 run was legendary.
Mhm.
The problem now is that all of these movies are connected to streaming shows that people do not like, people are not watching, people are not aware of.
Mhm.
And in the past, you'd have just regular Joe and regular Jane, and they were dating and they were having a great time. And they would go see their two, sometimes three Marvel movies a year, and they'd watch them and they'd understand them. And then they'd be excited that the next Marvel movie would be connected to those last couple of Marvel movies that they saw. But
Yeah.
regular Joe and regular Jane are not watching all these Disney Plus Marvel shows. They're skipping them. And then when something like Quantumania comes out that relies on regular Joe and regular Jane to have seen the Loki TV series, they're going to say, first of all, we broke up and stop texting me about going to see Marvel movies with you.
Yeah.
And second of all, they didn't watch these shows and therefore they don't understand what's going on anymore. It's too difficult. So Guardians of the Galaxy 3 apparently isn't very connected in the way that something like Quantumania was, but people have already thrown up their hands and said, I don't watch all these shows. I'm not going to understand this. I don't care. So I don't think it matters that this one was more standalone because the
Mhm.
whole idea of Marvel has become homework for the average person.
But and I'm going to then hone in on what you were talking about more specifically is that
Mm,
I think I agree with this, and what you were saying without saying is that motion pictures should not entangle themselves and be anchored to what is the vast wasteland of television,
yes,
because
100%.
television is an inferior medium
Hmm.
in general, right? There are great shows, don't Sopranos, Succession. We can go on and on, right?
On
There
and
are
on and
great
on.
shows,
Yes,
but they are beacons in a vast wasteland, okay?
right,
And so when you're like, you have to watch a TV show to enjoy the highest form of art, which
right.
is cinema,
Yes,
that is a mistake,
right,
because even DC knows
right,
that you got your CW superheroes and then you got your big screen superheroes, and
right.
never should the twain meet.
Never the twain should meet.
Even they know,
Even they
even
know.
them.
Right. You don't have to watch Arrow on the CW to go see the Batman.
Yes.
That would be a
That is
disaster.
how it should be.
That's
If
how
you
it should
wanna
be.
stay home, you get stay-at-home Flash. If you wanna go out, you see Go Out Flash.
Yes. 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 So I think that that has been a huge problem for these Marvel movies is the reliance on having to watch all of these streaming shows because yes, people love TV and we've had TV shows that become turned into hit movies forever and ever. If back in the mid 90s they announced there's Seinfeld the movie, that movie especially in the 90s opens to $31 million and does $130 million domestic. Easy, easy. But if in order to see that movie, you had to not just watch Seinfeld, but you had to watch Caroline in the City and
Yeah.
The Single Guy
Yep.
and Union Square
And Veronica's
and
Closet
Veronica's Closet
and
and
Jesse.
Fired Up and
Mhm.
Jesse. You had to watch all these other shows that people don't care about. Then the movie would have been a hard sell
Mhm.
because people don't want to watch all those shows. And people don't want to watch all these shows. And listen, Guardians again, we haven't seen the movie yet. Apparently, it's not super connected to these shows, but the assumption is out there already. You know,
Yeah.
it is now Marvel has to do the work to break people off of that assumption that if they're not watching these Disney Plus streaming shows, they're not going to understand the movies. And, you know, I just quickly want to touch on because we talked about this off mic the other day, but the next batch of Marvel movies,
Oh.
this is potentially a minefield. And
Mhm.
this becomes I would say, the apex of their problem, which is movies that depend on people having watched the streaming shows. So I'm just going to list out these are the next three movies that will be released by Marvel. And I think past this, nothing else is in production. So we really don't know if anything else will actually come out after these or what those movies will be after these. But
Yeah.
November right now, you've got November slated for the Marvels, which
Oh
is
boy.
basically Captain Marvel 2, and it's heavily dependent on watching the show Miss Marvel.
Mhm.
Then you've got in May of next year, so the May summer kickoff movie for 2024 is Captain America New World Order. So that's Anthony Mackie starring as the new Captain America. And you basically have had to watch Captain America and Winter Soldier to
Yes.
understand this movie.
Mhm.
And then in July of next summer is Thunderbolts,
Okay.
which what shows is that based on? That's based on Captain America and Winter Soldier. It's got Sebastian
Hawkeye.
Stan. Hawkeye you have to have watched. I think some other Marvel show that hasn't even come out yet you have to watch because this is the one where Julia Louis-Dreyfus's character is a big deal and she's only been on streaming shows.
I think
Um,
she showed didn't she show up in one of the movies at the end?
I think she was in Black Panther Wakanda Forever. But you look at these next three Marvel movies and Clayton, all three of those very easily could not just underperform, but full on bomb at the box office. The
Yeah.
Marvels, Captain America New World Order, and Thunderbolts. Those could
Here's
all bomb. All of
so
them.
Marvel's will. Marvel's will. And that's gonna be scary, but the scary one is gonna be when Captain America bombs because that is a marquee name.
It's a name, but not the
No, no,
character that people
that's what
remember from 10
but
years
but
ago.
what but Captain America is a IP name, right?
Mhm.
And so it's like when a Batman movie underperforms, it's like, wow, a Batman movie can underperform, right?
Right.
That's what we're talking about.
Right.
So
Right.
when that one goes down the toity,
Yep.
there's going to be scrambling because then what they have after that is Thunderbolts, which has no IP value to people that
Right.
haven't read comics.
Right. Right. Like that Thunderbolts movie is also dependent on being a fan of the Black Widow movie, which came out like in COVID summer of 2021.
Well, it's
So
also
one of the
dependent on you liking Captain America, like
well,
that
that's
Captain
the
America
Thunderbolts movie.
movie.
Well, I'm saying the Thunderbolts movie.
But no, but Pat, what I'm
Oh,
saying is
yes.
that it's going to
Yes.
come right after that Captain America movie, which is going to be tied to that,
Right.
right? And so because in the Thunderbolts movie, God, there's a character from the Falcon and Winter Soldier that is on the
Mm,
Thunderbolts team. So they're all
right.
connected.
They're all connected and they're all connected to these streaming shows.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. not opening to outright smash numbers because
Mhm.
Guardians opens to 130, 140, 150, whatever. Then Marvel could just at least crow about this all summer. They could
Yeah.
say this opened huge and it's a blockbuster. And don't you worry your pretty little heads because all our movies are going to be fine. Quantumania was an outlier.
Mhm.
And the fact that Guardians doesn't come in here with just undeniable smash numbers means that Marvel doesn't get to hide behind this. And
Mhm.
instead, the talk, as it's happening here, this is their worst nightmare. Marvel's worst nightmare is that the BO boys are not impressed by this Guardians number. And we're talking about the Marvels and Thunderbolts and Captain America New World Order. They do not want us talking about those movies at this point. They wanted us to be talking about how great Guardians did, and
Yeah.
that did not happen. And that is
No.
their worst nightmare.
Yes, we should you nailed it. I mean, I was just gonna reiterate exactly what you just said,
Feel
but
free
that
to.
is. Well, it's just that they we could be talking about how great this movie is and taking up all the time saying how close it was to the second one's opening and how these sort of Marvel legacy franchises can still do well. And we wouldn't even be mentioning Thunderbolts because
Right.
that's for next year,
Yeah.
but it's not because this is a domino that's knocking over the next and knocking over the next.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, and now all the pressure is going to be on this Marvels movie, The Marvels, which they already had moved from July. It was supposed to open this July 28th, and instead now they push it back to November. I know there's people out there who are calling for push this out to next winter.
Now get it out.
Get it,
Just get it out. Get the
use
poison
it,
out.
get the poison out. I mean, there is obviously that. There is something to opening it in a dead zone like January. But then listen, you run the risk. You put the Marvels out next January 2024. You run the risk of a cheapy, Megan 2 type movie or a Megan-esque universal comedy movie of honestly opening as big as the Marvels or close to it.
And that's
If
such an admission. If they move it to January, that would have been such an admission of this is garbage.
Yes, I mean that's a Morbius situation.
Yeah, yeah.
That then you're telling everyone Marvel's Morbius, which I don't think they'll do that. I think that movie is opening in November. And that's that.
Mhm.
But Marvel's looking at a situation where Guardians opened kind of soft, or at least it didn't open to undeniable smash hit. Everything's right with the world numbers. And they got 3 movies lined up that all could underperform or outright bomb.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that is the state they're in. I think that a year from now we're going to be talking about, or even earlier than that, we're going to be talking about how Marvel is fully resetting their film strategy. I mean, I'm going to throw this out here today on May 7th, May 8th, 2023. I think in the next couple of months, you're going to have an announcement along the lines of Robert Downey Jr. is back playing Iron Man in a Marvel movie, and the Russo brothers are directing a Marvel movie. And listen, the
Yeah.
Russo brothers could use a hit, obviously, but
Yeah.
I think they are in that straight. Or the announcement will be the next movie they're going into production with is a X-Men movie.
They and okay, I don't want to get into anything here. So Pat,
Okay,
you can step aside real fast while I possibly step in it because you have so much
okay,
more to lose than I do. I don't think
way
this is
more.
bad, but what I'm going to say is I think with the Jonathan Major situation, which everybody
Mhm.
can Google, and if you're
Huh.
listening to this show, you know what's going on, huh?
Huh?
That I think is a bad situation, obviously. And it is a bad situation because of what happened in the
Right.
real world, obviously. Okay.
Obviously.
But for Marvel, it's bad because they were setting up all these movies with this gentleman, right? But getting rid of him opens the door for them to wipe that slate and blame that and say, we were going to do Kang, but now we're not going to, out of respect, whatever they want to say,
Right.
or out of contractual whatever,
Right.
we're going to do X-Men. They have an out here. Like, they have an
Yes.
out to say we can't do Kang, and everybody knows why,
Yes.
right? The why he was hired, who knows? That's for Hollywood to look at itself, right?
Right.
But he was hired, and he will quite possibly be let go. It's
Right.
possible, or he will be in all the movies. It's also possible. That is
I
also
mean,
possible. But what you could do is
mhm.
take this chance, Kevin Feige, take this chance and wipe that slate, because that slate looks like shit, and do the fucking X-Men.
I mean, I think that it is a sure thing they're not doing those Kang movies. And it 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 I think that I think they're not doing those movies because mainly they have got to go to a sure thing, or at least as sure of a thing as they're going to be able to do,
Yeah.
which is either do X-Men, bring back, back up the money, jet at this point. I don't think you could
Mhm.
fit this money into a truck. You've
Yeah.
got it. Or maybe it's just a full train with like 30 cars and they're all filled with money. And
Yeah.
you're driving that train straight into Robert Downey Jr.'s mansion in the hills
Yeah.
and blowing
You're
up his
building a
house.
train track. You're building
Right.
a train track to his backyard so you can deliver it so he doesn't have to move a muscle.
Right. And you're getting him back in the Iron Man suit because they cannot go forward with these B characters any longer.
No, because they don't have the strong A characters around to it's the whole tentpole situation, right? They don't have any tentpoles left.
Right. Right. I mean, they've got Spider-Man. That's the thing.
But that's Sony, and they don't have a Spider-Man. They don't have a legitimate Tom Holland fronted Spider-Man movie in the slate coming up to bail them out.
I mean, the thing is, obviously, those are Sony and Disney co-productions. I think getting a Spider-Man movie into production is also going to be a priority
Oh, you got
for
to.
Marvel because they need that. They absolutely need that. So,
And they have the cartoon movie, but that's not the same because those are beloved by people who
well,
don't
that's
go see
Sony.
MCU movies.
Yeah. And I think that's Sony with no involvement from Disney. I think
That's
Disney's only involvement is in the live action Tom Holland
okay.
Spider-Man movies.
Yeah, that's quite possible. Yeah.
So I don't think Disney gets anything from the Sony animated Spider-Man movies.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
it's a dire situation for the MCU because
Mhm.
Guardians did not change the narrative at all. Listen, it made $114 million, huh? This is good for theaters because a movie opening to $114 million, it sold a lot of popcorn, filled a lot of seats. I'm sure theaters were very happy that this movie opened up this weekend and kicked off the summer.
Oh, yeah.
We're not here to say the movie industry is in trouble, the
No.
theatrical industry in trouble. That's not the case.
No.
That is absolutely not the case. This, though, is a narrative of the Marvel movie craze is in a decline. And when you look ahead to their next 3 movies, they have a lot of danger on the horizon because all 3 of those movies could outright bomb.
And that's the thing. We're not sitting here talking about, oh God, what does this mean for the rest of the summer slate?
Nope.
There's no reporting going on in any publication where this is signaling, oh no, are people just not going to the theater this summer now? That
No.
is not any sane publication is
No.
saying that.
No.
There isn't
No.
one saying that. This is
No.
about Marvel, like you said. And it's good that we can talk about this stuff instead of being here kvetching like, oh no, this signals bad things because people are going to interpret this as it's not, no one wants to go to the movies anymore and people are going to stay away. That's not the case. People are going to be in it to see Book Club 2 next week, right?
Exactly.
They're going to be in it for Fast X in 2
Yes.
weeks. Like
Little
Fast X
Mermaid is gonna do fine.
exactly.
Guardians
It's
underperforming or Marvel underperforming don't mean jack for the Little Mermaid. Little Mermaid is gonna do fine.
and you just had Mario. So if we had
Yes.
not had Mario, or if Mario came out and underperformed, then the theaters would be like, "Oh man, it would have been really awesome if we could have had like a huge, movie leading into the summer." And they did. They got one.
Right. They got one. They got Mario. Mario is going to be possibly a top 10 of all time domestic earner.
Yeah,
So, the movie theater business is obviously all their financials and their debt and all that. That's a different story, but in terms of just butts
people
and
going.
seats, do people want to go? Just look at the Mario numbers. People want to
Mhm.
go to the movie theater.
Yeah.
That is not what we're debating today with this Guardians underperformance. People want to go to the movie theater. They just don't necessarily want to go to Marvel superhero movies the way they did 4 or 5 years ago.
But I will say the ripple effect of this, and we talked
Mhm.
about this also off mic, is
Mhm.
that I'm a little bit more down on the Flash now after this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we got hyped up, and of course, listen, we're our own men. We can make our own decisions.
Huh.
We had Jeff Bach come in here straight off of CinemaCon.
Yeah.
He was half man, half hype, and he
Yeah.
admitted it. He
He's
admitted it,
yeah.
and he would
He
admit
said
it
he was
now.
53% hype that night on a summer
Yes,
movie preview, which is again, Marvel's in decline. The BO boys are ascending. That was our biggest episode of all time.
yes,
And Jeff
yes,
Bach came on that summer movie preview episode, biggest episode we've ever done, and he was very hype about the Flash. And listen, that rubbed off on us, and I agree. I think we may have overestimated what the Flash will do. But I still will say, I do think this is a Marvel problem.
yes, yes.
I think it's a Marvel problem.
It is a superhero problem in general because
Yes.
Marvel is the preeminent
Right.
creator and releaser of those sort of products, right?
Yes.
So that's
Yes.
why when we say there's superhero fatigue, we're mostly talking about Marvel. And then
Right.
there is the DC element too, with Shazam failing, of course, Black Adam, a movie that you were saying from the beginning was a bomb, right?
Weeks
Right?
and weeks and weeks,
Weeks and
I
weeks and
said
weeks.
on
That's
this
right.
show that Black Adam bombed. Weeks and weeks and
Yeah,
weeks.
that's the story. That's the story, right?
Yep.
And so that then is all superhero products seems to be on the downward. And Flash, I still think it's gonna make Bafa Bobo, but
Right.
might not be as big as we both kind of predicted it was
Yeah.
going to be.
Yeah. I think
But
we
I
both
don't
want to
think,
walk back the idea that The Flash will be the biggest movie of the summer. I
yeah,
think
yeah, yeah,
I listen, we talked about on that episode, I think we all were lower than we should be on Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning
yeah,
Part 1. That's the movie that still very well could be 1, 2 or 3 domestic for the
domestic,
summer, and we didn't have it
yeah,
there. We were overhyped on Flash, and we were obviously still way too big a believer in Guardians because we all had that in our top like 3 or 4. And this $114 million opening weekend, I think this movie is going to hold okay because people seem to like it. But this movie is not going to do 300, 50 million domestic. It's just not. It's just
no,
not.
and
Coming off of this opening weekend, it's just not.
Fast X in 2 weeks is going to eat its lunch.
It's going to eat its lunch 100%. And Little Mermaid's going to eat its lunch.
Hmm.
Little Mermaid's going to eat its lunch.
When does Little Mermaid come out?
I think it is the end of this month. I think we get a Fast X and Little Mermaid back to back. I'm looking at it right now. So you've got next week, of course, is Book Club, the next chapter on May 12th. Then May 19th is Fast X. And then the following weekend is Memorial Weekend, and that's Little Mermaid.
Yeah,
So
26th.
Guardians has next weekend where it's just Book Club is its competition, and then 19th Fast X eats its lunch, and then Little
Oh, and
Mermaid
then
comes in and just takes it to the bone that
and
weekend.
then June 2nd, Across the Spider-Verse.
Yeah, and then Guardians is just in the
Toast.
$2 theaters. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
toast.
Yeah. So again, it's a good weekend for movie theaters because a movie
Mhm.
made $114 million in one weekend.
Yeah.
It is a mixed to negative weekend for Marvel.
Mhm.
And I think the bigger story is the last surefire thing they had before 3 movies in a row that are iffy at best didn't blow the doors off. It just didn't.
Yeah. Yep.
You
Not
know, and
looking
listen,
good.
we talked in our preview episode about a lot of the reasons. I think it's pretty clear the cast of Guardians was pretty checked out on this one. We talked about that a lot. Chris Pine is Mario. You know, Star Lord
Chris
is
Pratt,
not his priority. Chris Pratt. Chris Pine is whatever the name of his Dungeons and Dragons
D&D
character
character,
is.
yeah.
Yeah. But Chris Pratt is Mario. Chris Pratt is Mario. He's done talking about Star Lord.
And for all the people who said, "Well, Chris Pratt said in interviews that he'd be willing to come back." No, he's not. He's not going to. He's
Well,
saying that because he's trying to be nice. Or he's putting them over the barrel and he's saying, "Guess what? If you want me back, you got to pay, baby."
so we haven't seen this film, but I have been trying to keep track of news. And
Don't spoil anything.
okay, I won't spoil anything then. I won't spoil anything
Don't
then.
don't spoil. Come on.
I won't
I
spoil
mean,
anything.
I think you even bringing this up is a spoiler.
Well, listen,
You
the
even
people the people who
doing
are
this,
coming
you
to listen to the BO Boys, they don't care about the movie itself. They only care about the business in the box office. So I
I
don't even
don't
think they can be spoiled. But I
I
won't
think
spoil
they
anything. I
should.
won't say
I
anything. I won't
think
say
they
anything.
should not care, but I think some of them
All
do
right,
because
I'll stop then.
nobody's
I won't say
perfect.
anything else. I
Well,
won't say
too
anything
bad,
else.
because guess what, Pat? That was just a non-spoiler spoiler. So thank you for spoiling me.
You're welcome. You have said you have no intention of seeing this movie at this point,
That's not true. I said if we didn't see it this weekend, which we didn't, because I
which we
still
didn't.
had Star Wars influenza,
Right.
and I'm just getting better now. Right? I would have seen this movie. We would have seen this movie
We would have.
we would have seen this movie. So it was Star Wars influenza. Thank you, Star Wars, for that. Thank you, May the 4th be with you day. Thank you for making me sick. Anyway, I would have seen this movie and now I'm spoiled, and that's fine. Listen, I
That is
shouldn't care
fine.
because we're talking about BO, but
Here's what we could agree on. That is fine. That is fine.
it's fine.
Um
But I will
yeah,
sue you. I am going to sue you for
go
punitive
for it, buddy.
damages that you're giving me.
You you sue me?
Yeah. Yeah, punitive damages.
All right.
So you sue
So that
everybody. Sue everybody.
there's I would say there is a high percentage of the BO Boys audience who is just cheering at what just happened there.
What we just did. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Because they know.
They
They
know.
get it and they love it.
Mhm.
They're rushing to go listen to those old cassette tapes right after this
Yes.
episode ends.
Yeah, dusting
Um
off the cassette tape player.
so is there anything else to say right now about Guardians? I mean, obviously a big story is going to be next weekend how it holds up. Cuz
Yeah.
listen, Quantum Mania opened only like $10 million less, $9 million less. This is a much more liked movie than Quantumania. Uh, It only opened up $8 million higher than Quantumania. Quantumania did 106.
Yeah.
I, I, I'm curious because I don't know if Guardians will hold better than
Mhm.
Quantumania. Quantumania was a fully loathed, derided movie. I
I
don't
mean,
know if
it dropped like 69%.
dropped 70% in its second weekend. I'm looking at Guardians is
69
not
to
going to
70,
do
yeah.
that. Guardians is not going to do that. But I just don't see some kind of incredible leggy run for Guardians coming off of this. I think it'll do fine, but I think it's going to. Yeah, I don't think it's going to get to 300 million. We'll talk about that in preview weekends and weekends to come.
Mhm.
But I just, it's a disappointing opening weekend. It just
Yeah.
is. It just is. Anything else that you felt like we didn't touch on in the rest of the top 10 that you
No,
feel
I
is
don't think
worth
we have to talk about it. I
anything?
mean, no, no, it's all old news. We don't have
Mhm.
to talk about it. The other new release, it came and went.
Love Again, based on the songs of Celine Dion, surprising, no surprise, did absolutely no business at the box office.
Did make the top 5, which I said, so I
It
nailed
did.
this top 5.
It did.
That's one thing. But other than that, I don't think we don't have time. We're at 50 minutes.
Yeah, yeah,
We've
yeah.
thoroughly talked Guardians. There's plenty of time to talk about any of these other movies if they do anything interesting, which they haven't.
Yeah. Uh, Here's something I'll throw out there for a future episode. Um, we should figure out at what point we're going to divvy up the millions for the Super Mario Brothers movie. I do think that is a movie that has earned the high status of having its money divvied up by the BO boys. You know, it is
Well, I mean,
currently at $518 million, and it's got a long ways to go, but maybe when it hits, and it's already past $1 billion worldwide, it's $1 billion baby.
yeah.
But yeah, maybe we'll wait until later in its run. But I do think eventually that is a movie that's going to have to get its money divvied up.
Mhm. And that's
But
Illumination, so it's going on the cock.
it's going on. The Mario's going to go on the cock. But right now, they're they've pushed back the PVOD date,
Mhm.
so we don't know the cock
Smartly.
date. Yeah, so there is no cock date for Mario, but obviously, Mario does not want to go on the cock.
Yeah, and I think that's when we divvy up the millions.
Yeah, when
Is that day.
Mario, yep, the day Mario drops on the cock, then we divvy up the millions.
Yeah, so that's the day, and that's not gonna
Yeah,
come for a while. So,
no, that won't come soon.
okay. So, Pat, where can they find us?
Email us at theboboyspodcast at gmail.com. We love getting your emails. In fact, I'm going to quickly read an email we got from our pal Danny at I Screen, You Scream for Movies. Great podcast. And Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 Legs is his subject. And Danny writes to us here to support and say the legs for Gardens Volume 3 is going to be great. While I know the MCU fatigue is indeed happening, but the reviews and word of mouth are so great. Even I support the movie very much and say it's well deserved, especially we all have to appreciate one man who is a lifesaver and great CBM director of all, James Gunn. Saw it past Thursday, loved very much, and I predict for the second weekend that this will drop around 50%. If all well said and done, never doubt James Gunn. Thanks for reading. Danny, I screen, you scream for the number 4
Number 4.
movies. So thank you for that email. And listen, Danny, he saw the movie and he says that the word of mouth and the legs are going to be great. So that's great boots on the ground reporting from Danny.
Yeah.
Hope he's right. Hope
I
he's
hope
right.
he's right. I do think this will drop in the 60s, though.
I agree.
Yeah.
So email us at the BO Boys Podcast at gmail.com. Of course, we are YouTubers, so subscribe and watch on YouTube. Even if you listen to the whole episode as a podcast, just watch it again on YouTube because you are going to experience something completely new. You're going to be seeing us as we talk, which is, I think, just incredible entertainment. So you can't experience it only on podcast. You've got to subscribe, like and subscribe. I'm pointing down. Smash that like button, smash that subscribe button. We are YouTubers now. So find the BO Boys podcast on YouTube. Give us 5 stars on Apple Podcast. Really helps new listeners find the show. And the show is bigger than ever. Like we said, April, biggest month in the history of the BO Boys. And I think May could be even bigger. So tell your friends to listen to the show. Give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. and follow us on social media. Want to be Owen Turn Christopher is doing a bang up job, just killing it with the video clips on our Twitter channel. So follow us at the BO Boys Pod on social media. And Clayton, that's all I got.
Yeah, that's all there is.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything left to say,
No.
except until next time.
Will
We'll
smell
smell
you
you
at
at
the
the
box
box